सभी शौचालय में ध्वनि संवेदक यंत्र लगे हैं। मोबाइल फोन और अन्य इलेक्ट्रॉनिक उपकरण जैसे छोटी किताब के आकार के रीडर्स का उपयोग फ्लाइट मोड में किया जा सकता है।
India's civil aviation industry is growing and growing well.
नमस्कार, कृपया ध्यान दीजिए। जेट एयरवेज की उड़ान संख्या 9W की बिना किसी विलंब के अपने विमान की ओर तुरंत प्रस्थान करें। धन्यवाद।
With passenger traffic close to 20% greater than it was in the previous financial year. But has supply been able to match demand? While the number of passengers travelling by flight both domestically and internationally has grown, why is the airline sector in India not able to measure up in terms of profitability? What are the challenges that the civil aviation sector in India faces?
In around 240 days in 2018, 622 aircraft in India through gravity-defying takeoffs took almost 18.7 crore passengers from point A to their respective destinations across the world. And the government is expecting this number of passengers to see a growth by about 6 times to over 100 crore people in the next 2 decades. The jet engines are roaring. There's more rubber on the runways. But the Indian aviation sector is living a paradox. On one hand, there is accelerating passenger growth. On the other hand, there is decelerating the health of the aviation sector. To find out about the reasons of these contradictions, we have come to Mumbai at the Global Aviation Summit. Let's find out.
More than 1,200 delegates from India and across the world were present at the Global Aviation Summit in Mumbai. And this was the Indian government's opportunity to showcase to the world the potential it offered for growth, as well as address some of the pressing concerns the industry was facing. The summit was attended by a number of foreign delegates. And while the outlook overall appears to be positive for India, there were red flags raised about roadblocks in terms of foreign investment.
The UPA government in 2012 had permitted 49% foreign direct investment into domestic carriers, which gave us Vistara, AirAsia India, and of course an investment in Jet Airways by Etihad Airways. Then in 2016, the NDA government decided to raise this limit to 100%. Up to 49% via automatic route, and above 49% there would be a government approval that will be required. But despite that, we haven't seen airlines like Qatar, who've been wanting to come to India, to actually come and invest here. Qatar long back had expressed the desire to come and invest in India. You've been coming here regularly, you have expressed your desire as well. India needs investment, but why is it not really materializing?
Well, I think you'll have to ask these questions from the authorities, because according to the announcement made by your Honorable Prime Minister that he is encouraging 100% domestic airline to be owned by a foreign entity, from that time we have showed interest that we would like to have an airline of at least 100 aircraft based in India. Unfortunately, it seems there is a confusion, because the FDI says that we can own 100%, whilst the authorities on the other hand are telling us that no, as an airline we can only own 49%. But if it is a sovereign fund that can own 100%, but we are owned by our sovereign fund. So, you know, it is a little bit of a confusion, and the confusion is so deep-rooted is that nobody is giving us the answer, which way we should go. But we as an investor, we are ready to invest because we see India as a huge potential aviation market, but at the same time, we also want to invest in India because we in Qatar have a very close economic and political relation with India, and we want to contribute to the progress and prosperity of India and the Indian people.
Qatar has got a wonderful airport as well, and Mr. Modi has been visiting many countries, and he has been trying to sell the India story, trying to say that, you know, come here, invest in India, we've made things easier for you. Our ranking also has improved significantly. What you are telling us, it gives us a sense that perhaps it's still very difficult for people like you who are willing to open their purse strings. They're not able to do it.
Well, unfortunately, we have been facing a lot of hurdles, and I would like to very much invest in India because, again, I repeat that we have huge confidence. Our government has huge confidence in the potential India has, and I've always, on many media interviews, mentioned that India is a sleeping economic giant. You should be the largest economy in the world. But at the end of the day, how easy you make investments, how easy you make people to come here, how easy you make people to repatriate their profits, how easy you make the business environment is extremely important. Without this, you won't be able to ever utilize the full economic potential India has. I'm interested in the most successful airline, and today the most successful airline is that you just mentioned. I don't want to make free advertisement for Indigo all the time, but it's a fact.
Okay.
So we would like to really invest in Indigo if we had the opportunity.
Is it true?
But at the same time, we still want to invest in 100% Qatari-owned domestic carrier.
Would you like to bring into India Qatar Airways instead of a collaboration with an airline like this?
It is not bringing Qatar Airways. It is bringing an Indian carrier.
Okay.
Run by Indians.
Okay.
Chairmanship by Indians.
Okay.
But bringing the Qatar Airways quality to India.
That's wonderful. Is it also true that as far as A320 Neos are concerned, certain aircraft which were supposed to go to Qatar, they were repainted for Indigo by Airbus?
Well, I'm not aware of it. This is a question, you better ask the boss of Airbus, not the boss of Qatar Airways.
But you did say no to the deliveries of A320 Neo aircraft because you found some problems out there.
No, we very correctly refused to take delivery of the Neos, and since then, you know, this I'm talking about 3 years ago.
Why did you...
There is a huge improvement in the product, and Qatar Airways will start taking our Neos from next year.
Why did you stop, taking the delivery of A320?
Because there was problems, technical problems with the engines, with some aircraft systems, and we are in a hurry to get aeroplanes. So we rather stick to the Airbus aeroplanes we are already operating than to get an aircraft that would give us grief.
Last question, what is the amount that you're looking to invest in India?
It will be at least a couple of billion US dollars.
The numbers appear to be by and large in India's favor in terms of the opportunities for further growth. And as one of the world's fastest growing economies, and increasing disposable income for the middle class, there is reason for optimism. But beneath this generally positive forecast, there are reasons to be cautious.
The growth is not profitable. And what we need to do, as I have said earlier, is we will be better off as a country if we reduce our growth rate by 2 or 3%, but make it profitable, or at least break even. Today, because of the losses, they have to borrow working capital, and the servicing of that debt becomes very expensive. So you get into a vicious circle where your cost just keeps going up and up. In the reality, what the successful carriers do is they save money from operation, they stash it and use it for advancement and growth by adding more airplanes or developing new routes. So I think India can do the same thing. And what is helping already in India is the fuel prices continues to stay low. We're also seeing rupee at a reasonable exchange rate of 70, and it's not going to 74 to 100 like some people predicted. These two things, coupled with the fact that we have inherent growth of passengers in India because we have significant people who are willing to fly, I think that is what is going to help aviation in India.
Everybody must be aware that airlines are growing, they are a fantastic business, but financially it's a fragile business. Our margins are small. Our buffer to be able to cope with shocks or uncertainties that we are exposed to is very thin. So it's not surprising that in India, but also in other parts of the world, you see new companies arriving, very successful, but also companies disappearing. It has always been the case.
With this, we are slipping into a very short break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side, on Inside, we'll talk about other interesting measures being taken by the Ministry of Civil Aviation to improve the overall experience of passengers in the airline sector. So is this 20% growth in the passenger traffic that we are seeing on a monthly basis sustainable? Well, many say yes, it is sustainable, but for this, a lot will have to be done. For example, the government will have to do something about the high aviation turbine fuel cost that's impacting the overall profitability of the airlines in India. On the other hand, there is a lot that the airlines will also have to do. And as far as the opportunity of passenger traffic is concerned, it's huge, because बहुत सारे ऐसे हवाई चप्पल वाले हैं इस देश में जो हवाई जहाज में उड़ने की कामना रखते हैं.
India is a hugely price-sensitive market. You increase fares and there is a resultant effect on the growth. So as a consequence of which, airlines have been stimulating the market through low fares to fill up the aircraft. It's clearly, as we call in the airline parlance, you are registering your market growth at the expense of profitability, which in the short term is all right, but is disastrous in the long term. As we see in an Indian context, low-cost carriers and full-service carriers. Low-cost carriers, in spite of the fact they don't give certain amenities like the full-service carriers, yet command as good a fare as the full-service carriers. Clearly, full-service carriers are not being able to recover the cost of producing a seat. So they are getting into losses, becoming unsustainable. Air India's story we all know, Jet Airways story we are getting to know. So all this thing is impacting. I wouldn't really say that it's the government which is prodding the airlines to offer lower fares. It is, I would say, stupidity on the part of airlines to be offering low fares only to protect their future acquisition of aircraft. There are 1,000 aircraft on order, we all know about it. 120 aircraft got inducted in the year 2018 with the huge capacity induction that's going to take place. How are they going to fill up the aircraft if their existing aircraft are not filled up through low fares? That's the sum and substance of what ails the Indian aviation industry.
Are airlines under pressure? The demand for lower fares is ever increasing. But at a time of no profitability and increasing costs, there is a mismatch between expectations and reality.
Firstly, the demand is there. There is no question about it. You know, we start flights to all these new destinations and we see them pretty much fill overnight. So the demand is certainly there. The question is, can we do it profitably? And you are absolutely correct. We need to find ways of doing this profitably. Government needs to be sensitive to trying to reduce cost for aviation. We cannot have the most expensive aviation fuel in the world, the most expensive airports in the world, and the cheapest fares in the world, and expect for that to be sustainable. So we have to bring down the cost of aviation fuel at least at the same level as other countries, and as well as airport costs. You know, as we were saying today in the summit, it's important that we have functional airports. We don't need to have glorious airports, because ultimately the consumer is going to pay for really fancy airports. So we need to look at it a little more strategically, see where we are, higher cost compared to other countries and airlines around the world, and try and bring down that cost. If we can do that, there is no reason why Indian airlines are pretty efficient. We can find ways to be sustainable, profitable, and the growth that the government is talking about from a demand perspective is eminently possible. It's the fuel price, of course. It has to be the oil price, the fuel price, because in our country what happens is that the oil price, the problem of an oil price increase internationally is exacerbated because of the high tax on fuel. So that is going to be the biggest challenge for aviation going forward. And I think following that would be the infrastructure constraints that we have.
I think put it that way, in terms of travel is like any product, it's a function of, the pricing is always a function of supply and demand. So I guess if you leave it to the market force to decide what is the supply and what is demand, eventually the market will find an equilibrium in terms of what is an affordable as well as same time sustainable pricing. I think bringing the ATF under GST, I think it helps the airlines. It's something that we all are looking forward to. So we leave it to the government to decide how to take this forward. I think the challenges that we are all facing, the government is well aware of. They are also very proactive in terms of trying to help us to address some of them. Of course, internally within each airline, we do have our own set of challenges, which I think every one of us are working very hard to resolve what is possible within the airline control to make it more competitive and make it more attractive for the customers.
Several private players are now part of the airport infrastructure market. One of the prominent players is GMR.
For which there is no need. The existing private airports, the total investment since privatization started, so it's been almost 12-13 years, the total investment of private airport operators has been of the order of about $6 billion US. But over the next 4 to 5 years, the private airport operators are going to invest, including the ones which are now in the stages of privatization, all these airports, they are going to invest almost 10 billion US over the next 4 to 5 years.
Kerala had representation in the summit in the form of V. Tulsidas, the CEO of Kannur International Airport. Kerala has 4 international airports, and it is a consequence of a demand because of a large diaspora that is based especially in the Gulf countries, with whom the state and India also have strong trading links.
Kerala has 4 international airports, perhaps the only state in the country to have 4 international airports, with Kannur, my airport, having been commissioned on the 9th of December. But Kerala has always had a lot of international travel demand, partly because of the Gulf. Many Keralites work there. Not only work, many Keralites do business there. And many do business both in the Gulf and in India. So that has been one major factor. Second is tourism in Kerala. It's a major industry, and that brings in a lot of traffic. We also export many things to the Gulf, especially. These are some of the factors that favor airports in Kerala, especially international.
Has the government done enough to allay the concerns raised? Hina Gambhir spoke to the Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha.
Everybody has to support the fact that ATF should be in GST and that we should provide input tax credit for all of the taxes that are paid in the sector. We are very, very hopeful that the GST Council will take that up and will pass that, and we have been constantly representing to them. So we will have to hope and wait for that to happen. We have 700 airplanes in the sky right now. There are about 1,000 planes on order. And last year we added 100 planes to a base of 600. So actually, if you look at the amount of planes that are on order, if you look at the order books that Boeing and Airbus and other aircraft manufacturers have, we can in fact sustain this growth. But I think a good growth rate for India would be somewhere in the 12 to 15% range, because at that growth rate, we can ensure that we have the necessary capacity and all the systems in place to be able to support this growth as well.
These are interesting times to say the least for Indian civil aviation, with policy, infrastructure and pricing proving to be both areas of cooperation and bones of contention between the airlines and the government. Both will hope that it's more of the former.